We begin this journey not with an opening statement, but with a sudden, searing void. Imagine the unrelenting rhythm of midday life in the heart of the metropolis, the cacophony of commerce and consequence reaching its absolute zenith. Picture the corner of Fifth Avenue and Grand Street, a nexus of concrete and ambition, where thousands of individuals rush toward arbitrary deadlines, their existence a predictable series of steps, keystrokes, and scheduled obligations. It was precisely into this hypervisible, aggressively real environment that the impossible chose to manifest itself. At 1:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, Arthur Penhaligon, a man whose life until that precise moment was defined by the meticulous organization of his 37 years, stopped walking. He was centered perfectly between a bright red street vendor cart and a perpetually overflowing bin, the sun directly overhead casting shadows that offered no concealment whatsoever. Arthur Penhaligon was not running, he was not hiding, and he was certainly not struggling. He simply stopped, turned his face slightly upward toward the oppressive blue sky, and a profound, utterly bewildering smile bloomed upon his face, a smile of pure, unadulterated relief, as though he had just successfully navigated a lifetime of complex calculation and arrived at the simplest, most elegant answer. And then, in the blink of an eye, in the span of time required for a pedestrian to shift their weight from heel to toe, Arthur Penhaligon ceased to be where he was. He vanished. T was not the sudden, brutal removal associated with tragedy or collision. It was a flawless, immediate negation of presence. One observer, a delivery driver sipping lukewarm coffee, described the event later with a chilling simplicity. He was there, and then he wasn't. Like a frame skipped in a movie, but the movie kept playing without him. This initial observation, so simple yet so utterly defiant of physics, serves as the uncompromising bedrock of our mystery, the second hook that snags our attention and refuses to let go. We are not dealing with a simple missing person. We are grappling with a spontaneous deletion of being in the most inconvenient, most public space imaginable. Who was this man, Arthur Penhaligon, whose existence ended not in a slow fade, but in an instantaneous rupture? Contextualizing Arthur reveals the true depth of the enigma. He was an architect, specializing in structural design, a profession demanding absolute adherence to logic, gravity, and material reality. His life was a monument to order. 3 bespoke suits, rotated religiously, a minimalist apartment decorated in shades of gray and white, and a routine so predictable you could set a highly accurate atomic clock by it. He was a creature of tangible certainty, making his exit into the realm of the intangible all the more jarring. He was, by all accounts, successful, respected, and utterly bound by the structures he himself helped to erect around the world. The problem, the foundational conflict that immediately threw the most hardened investigators into existential crisis, was the sheer lack of physical signature. When a person vanishes, the world always bears the scar of their leaving, a dropped key, a scuff mark, a faint residue of struggle, or the telltale track of a getaway vehicle. With Arthur, there was nothing. The ground was untouched. The surrounding air, captured meticulously by forensic analysis, held no unusual particulates, no traces of accelerants or exotic chemicals. The numerous CCTV cameras, recording the intersection from 6 different angles, captured Arthur's steady walk, the uplift of his head, the transcendent smile, and then universally across all feeds, the crucial millisecond where the image should have registered his subsequent movement was instead a perfect, baffling white noise. A momentary corruption of data that looked less like a malfunction and more like a deliberate, synchronized erasure. This immediately opened critical loops of inquiry that standard police procedure could not close. Was the event proof of technological mastery far beyond current known capabilities? Did Arthur possess knowledge, perhaps gained in the preceding months, that allowed him to manipulate the very space-time around him? Or was this something far older, far more profound, a metaphysical achievement disguised as a simple disappearance? The investigators, led by the stoic but increasingly beleaguered Detective Patricia Hayes, found themselves fighting not against an antagonist, but against the very laws of causality. The development of the investigation quickly spiraled away from criminal intent and into existential philosophy. Hayes and her team discovered that Arthur's meticulous exterior had begun to fray approximately 6 months prior to his vanishing. He had abruptly quit his high-pressure job, citing a vague need for re-evaluation of core geometry. His immaculate apartment was found emptied of all personal memorabilia, except for 3 items: a single worn copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, a cheap fountain pen, and a thick hand-bound journal filled not with architectural blueprints, but with frenetic yet beautifully articulated philosophical musings. It is in these notebooks that the true pattern begins to emerge, transforming the case from a police procedural into a profound exploration of human potential. Arthur's writings were focused entirely on the concept of dimensional congruence, and what he termed the third door. He wrote, obsessively, about the need to shed the scaffolding of imposed identity, arguing that the physical self was merely a temporary structure built around a far more expansive, eternal consciousness. His journal entries became increasingly esoteric, yet strikingly motivational. One passage read, "We spend our entire lives cementing ourselves into four walls: our jobs, our mortgages, our relationships, and our fears. We believe these walls protect us, but they are simply the limitations we accept. True architecture is not about building walls, but about dissolving the need for them. The third door is not a way out of the world, but a way into the self so complete that the need for a fixed physical coordinate simply evaporates." This escalating progression of thought led to a staggering pattern interrupt in the investigation. When Hayes interviewed Arthur's few remaining acquaintances, they uniformly described a man who, in his final weeks, had attained an almost unbearable level of calm. He didn't seem depressed or manic, he seemed finished. He wasn't preparing for a trip, he was preparing for a destination that superseded geography. This realization fundamentally shifted the narrative for Detective Hayes. She stopped looking down at the pavement for footprints and started looking inward for meaning. She realized that Arthur Penhaligon had been engaged in an intense, private project, the construction of a self so perfectly aligned with its true purpose that its physical manifestation became optional. This transition from external investigation to internal reflection became the second profound hook in the middle of our story. We stop asking who took him, and start asking the infinitely more challenging, more inspiring question: did Arthur Penhaligon simply transcend? The development intensified as investigators analyzed his final weeks, noticing his complete dedication to detachment. He gave away his expensive possessions, not carelessly, but intentionally, matching each item to a person he felt would genuinely benefit. He settled all his minor debts, tidied his digital footprint, and achieved a state of zero physical and emotional obligation. He was not abandoning his life, he was streamlining his existence down to its purest, most essential vector. The vanishing was the inevitable climax of this profound de-escalation of self-binding. The final entry in Arthur's journal, dated the day before his disappearance, was brief, yet staggering in its implication. It simply stated, "The structure is complete. The scaffolding is ready to be discarded. Today, I am bound by gravity. Tomorrow, I will be bound by truth." The true climax of this enduring mystery arrives not with the discovery of a secret bunker or a hidden aircraft, but with the painful necessary realization that Arthur's disappearance was his greatest act of presence. The closure does not come from finding his body, but from understanding his intent. Detective Hayes, in her final highly classified report, refused to close the case as either a suicide or an unsolved abduction. Instead, she introduced a chillingly hopeful third category: voluntary existential discontinuance. Arthur Penhaligon had achieved the ultimate philosophical triumph, proving that the walls we build are merely suggestions. He didn't run away, he ran into a higher form of reality, a place where his carefully constructed logical self could no longer contain the magnitude of his realized consciousness. The payoff, the ultimate conclusion, is stark and deeply motivational. Arthur Penhaligon remains physically absent, a haunting empty space on Fifth Avenue. But the mystery of the man who disappeared in broad daylight is not about loss, it is about radical choice. It is the definitive proof that if you align your inner architecture with enough intention, if you strip away every unnecessary layer of societal expectation and fear, the mundane boundaries of your current life might just dissolve. He showed us that the greatest confinement is the belief that we must remain exactly where we are, perpetually governed by yesterday's limitations. Arthur Penhaligon did not vanish from the world. He transitioned through it, leaving behind a legacy of philosophical possibility. The space where he stood is now perpetually charged with the unspoken question: if Arthur, the master of concrete and logic, could choose to discard the reality that held him, what limitations are we, the viewers, continuing to accept as unbreakable law? The challenge is clear. We ask you now, not to solve the impossible logistics of his vanishing, but to look deeply at the structures currently binding your own potential. What is the scaffolding in your life that you are ready to discard? What is your own third door, and what radical, fearless act of self-actualization are you prepared to undertake today to achieve absolute, untethered freedom? Reflect on Arthur's final journey, and commit now to beginning the difficult, exhilarating work of dismantling the walls you once thought were your protection.